Alright guys, we're on section 5 of our third unit of this grammar review. We're on page 169 and we're working with the section titled Transitive and Intransitive Verbs, Direct and Indirect Objects, Predicate Nouns, and Predicate Adjectives. So before we get started with these definitions, I just wanted to write on the board to remind you guys when they say predicate, I know a lot of times we use verb and predicate interchangeably, but when we're looking at the structure of a sentence, the predicate is the part of the sentence that comes behind the verb. So right as soon as it hits the verb, everything that follows is considered the predicate of the sentence. Alright, so let's go to our first definition of a transitive verb. A verb that is transitive directs action towards the object. So object is defined as something or someone named in the predicate. Intransitive verbs do not have an object. There is no receiver of the action. Linking verbs are always intransitive. Direct objects are nouns or pronouns in the predicate to which the action of the verb is directed or done. It answers the question whom or what. An indirect object is a noun or a pronoun in the predicate that tells to or for whom or to or for what the action is done. The indirect object comes between the verb and the indirect, the indirect object comes between the verb and the direct object. I do apologize for my handwriting. And then our last two definitions, we have predicate noun, which identifies or renames the subject, and then a predicate adjective, which describes the subject. So we'll refer back to these definitions as needed. But let's go to our textbook. We're on 169. Section 5. So we're looking at 29 through 35. And I think I'll do about 3 from this section just so we get a gist of it. So the directions say, write each verb and label it transitive or intransitive. Then write each object and label it either direct object or indirect object. Then write each predicate noun and predicate adjective and label it predicate noun or predicate adjective. So the first one's pretty easy. 29. Hand me that atlas. So your first task is to identify the verb in that sentence. So it'll be hand. That's the only verb that we find in this sentence. So we're writing the verb and we're labeling it either transitive or intransitive. So it's hand me that atlas. So if you guys remember your types of sentences, or sorry, not your kinds of sentences, which we talked about in Unit 1. Remember, this is an imperative sentence. So an imperative sentence makes a demand or makes a request. So the implied subject of this sentence is you. So in parentheses, if you were looking for the subject, it's you. Hand me that atlas. So the subject of the sentence is you. So let's go to our definitions for transitive or intransitive. So someone is being handed that atlas, the book. So there is a receiver of the action. Someone is being handed that book. So hand would be a transitive verb because the action is being directed towards the object. And then it wants us to look at each object and label it direct or indirect object. So if we know that the implied you of the sentence would be the subject, then that means me would be the object of the sentence. But what kind of object? So looking at our definitions, indirect object is a noun or pronoun and the predicate that tells to or for whom or to or for what the action is done. It comes between the verb and the direct object. A direct object is a noun or a pronoun and the predicate to which the action of the verb is directed or done. So, hand me that atlas. So, me would be indirect in this sentence, and atlas would be the direct object, because the atlas is being handed to the subject. All right, let's go to 32, and then we'll do 35. So 32, its name was Franklin in the 18th century. So I'll let you guys think about it. So identify our verbs first. All right, so we have was. It's our only verb for this sentence. And because it is a linking verb, it's automatically going to be intransitive. So, since it is an intransitive verb, we do not have an object. So we get to skip the direct or indirect question. And we're going to go straight to looking at if there's a predicate noun or a predicate adjective. So we're at 32. And if we need to refer back to our definitions, a predicate noun identifies or renames the subject. A predicate adjective describes the subject. So let's identify the subject. So for 32, its name was Franklin in the 18th century. So I'm waiting for you guys to think about it. So Franklin would be the predicate noun because it renames or identifies the subject. Okay, so that's 32. Let's go down to 35. Tennessee produces an enormous amount of marble. So we're looking for our verbs first. So produces is the only verb that we have in this sentence. And because it is producing something, it's going to be transitive. And then looking for our direct or indirect objects. Our direct object, that we only have a direct object in the sentence, it would be amount. Alright guys, let me know if you have any questions about section 5, and I will try my best to answer them.